Give a rat food laced with capsaicin, and it eats it exactly once. After that, it won't touch the stuff again, sometimes for the rest of its life. Show a dog a chili pepper, and it recoils, then avoids anything that smells like it, forever. Every mammal scientists have tested learns the same lesson in a single bite. And then there's you, or someone you know, biting into a pepper hot enough to send a grown adult to the emergency room, eyes streaming, and going back for a second bite anyway, ordering it again next week. So why does the one species smart enough to know better keep chasing the exact sensation every other animal learns to run from? Or is it just a taste we picked up somewhere, the same harmless way we picked up coffee or beer? Start with what's actually happening in your mouth, because it isn't what it feels like. Nothing is burning. There's no heat, no tissue damage, nothing physically wrong with you at all. Capsaicin, the compound in the pepper, binds to a receptor in your nerve endings called TRPV1, a switch whose entire job is detecting real, dangerous heat, the kind that comes off a hot stove. Think of it as a switch that flips the instant something crosses roughly 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Capsaicin hijacks that switch and fires it anyway, and your brain reads a 5-alarm signal off a mouthful of vegetable matter. The scientist who mapped exactly how that receptor works, David Julius, won the Nobel Prize for it in 2021. Proof that pain and heat run through the same wiring inside you, and that one plant figured out how to pull both alarms with a single molecule. That receptor was never built with you in mind. Your teeth grind seeds into paste before they ever get a chance to grow. A bird's gut passes those same seeds out whole, sometimes miles from where they started. So the plant needed a lock that kept one group out and stayed invisible to the other. Capsaicin does exactly that. Birds carry almost no TRPV1 response to it at all, and ecologist Joshua Tewksbury documented the pattern in the wild in 2001. Birds feasting calmly on fruit that squirrels wouldn't touch twice. Picture that first bite from the rat's side. It isn't spicy. It's an emergency. The same alarm as an open flame. The animal remembers and doesn't go back. Every time you reach for hot sauce, you're overriding a lock built specifically to keep mammals like you out. You can see how close that lock came to winning in 2018. A 34-year-old man entered a hot pepper eating contest in New York and ate a single Carolina Reaper, a pepper measuring over 2 million Scoville units, roughly 1,000 times hotter than a jalapeno. Within minutes, he was doubled over with dry heaves, then a headache that hit full force in under a minute, a kind doctors call thunderclap for exactly that reason. At Bassett Medical Center in Cooperstown, doctors ruled out a stroke and an aneurysm, then found something stranger. Several arteries feeding his brain had constricted, a condition called reversible cerebral vasoconstriction syndrome, serious enough to raise real fear of a stroke. He wasn't posturing for a video. Somewhere between the first bite and that scan, the alarm you've been paying to trigger for fun finally meant exactly what it was built to mean. That pepper didn't occur naturally either. It was built. In a greenhouse outside Rock Hill, South Carolina, a backyard breeder named Ed Curry spent nearly a decade crossbreeding the hottest peppers he could find, chasing a number nobody had hit yet. By 2013, his creation averaged over 1.5 million Scoville units, spiking past 2.2 million in individual pods. He called it the Carolina Reaper, and it held the world heat record for years. One man, alone, spent a decade deliberately re-engineering a plant's own warning system to be more effective, on purpose, because people like you wanted it hotter. You weren't born loving any of this. Babies reject capsaicin at first, and Rosen and Deborah Schiller found the same pattern in children growing up around Chile in central Mexico. What changed wasn't instinct, but repeated exposure. A little more, meal after meal, until heat stopped registering as danger and started registering as home. Rosen later described the broader pattern as benign masochism, pleasure from sensations that mimic danger while the brain knows you're safe. Roller coasters, horror movies, ice baths, The body fires the alarm. The mind knows there's no real threat. Not fear, a rush. Not everyone chases that rush the same amount, and the reason isn't toughness. In a 2013 study, food scientist John Hayes at Penn State tracked what actually separates chili lovers from everyone else, and it wasn't pain tolerance. It was personality, specifically sensation-seeking, the same trait that pulls some people toward fast driving or skydiving. The ones who loved the burn weren't the ones who could take more pain. They were the ones who went looking for it on purpose. It's not about who's tough, it's about who goes looking, and if you're still watching this, you already know which one you are. Zoom out to entire populations, and the pattern turns almost too clean. In 1998, researchers Jennifer Billing and Paul Sherman compared spice use in traditional recipes against climate across dozens of cultures, and hot countries used dramatically more spice than cold ones, not slightly more, sometimes many times more. The reason has nothing to do with flavor. Meat spoils faster in heat, and long before refrigeration, spoiled meat could kill you. Capsaicin turns out to be a genuine antimicrobial, slowing the exact bacteria responsible for food poisoning. This was never really about taste. It was food safety wearing a disguise convincing enough that entire cultures mistook it for tradition and fell in love with the disguise itself. Here's the obvious objection, and it's fair. If capsaicin evolved specifically to repel mammals, why would the most cautious mammal on the planet choose to eat more of it, on purpose, forever? A rational animal avoids the thing wired to hurt it. That's not a small point. That's survival at its most basic. Except you didn't just learn to tolerate the lock. Your species took the plant that built it, moved it into gardens on every continent, bred it hotter generation after generation, and turned an anti-mammal weapon into a global industry worth billions. The plant itself began entirely in the Americas. Every version of it eaten anywhere else on Earth today got there because someone carried it, not because it grew there on its own. No other animal has ever taken a defense mechanism, dragged it across oceans, and turned it into entertainment. You didn't out-evolve the warning, you hijacked it, and you've been running the alarm on purpose, every day, everywhere, ever since. Here's the part no lab can settle, though. Put two people in front of the same pod, same Scoville count, same receptor doing the same job in both mouths, and one of them grins, and one of them cries, and both reactions are completely real. Twins raised in the same kitchen, eating the same food their whole lives, can still land on opposite sides of that line. Genetics can explain some of the gap. A handful of TRPV1 variants make some nervous systems louder than others from birth. But genetics doesn't explain all of it, and nobody has ever figured out how to hand you someone else's mouth for 30 seconds and ask what fire tastes like from inside it. You can watch the scan. You can never borrow the sensation. Go back to that scan in Cooperstown for a second. A 34-year-old man, doubled over, arteries in his own brain narrowed by a plant compound, his body mistook for real danger. Nothing in that contest tent was actually dangerous, and his own nervous system nearly landed him in intensive care anyway. 5 weeks later, when doctors imaged him again, every one of those vessels had opened back up, like nothing had happened. As far as anyone can tell, we're the only species that pays to trigger its own alarm system on repeat, purely for the rush of watching itself survive something that was never a real threat to begin with. Every rat that's ever failed a capsaicin test learns the lesson in one bite and never comes back. You heard the same alarm and built an entire cuisine around ignoring it. Maybe that's not a glitch. Maybe every bite is just a small, deliberate reminder that the body still works, that the alarm still rings, and that somewhere underneath all the noise, you can still feel something loudly enough to laugh about it. Next time the sweat starts, and your eyes water, and someone asks why you're going back for more, you already know the answer. You're not eating the pepper. You're chasing the proof.